the biggest entrepreneur platform on the planet. This is Business Rockstars.
So Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. You've spent the last 20 years as a trailblazing developer of premium entertainment, a builder of digital media platforms, a creator of content marketing solutions. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey and how that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I started out in sort of, I guess you can call it premium broadcast entertainment. So I started out in the mailroom at UTA in 2000. Sort of worked my way up through the industry that was really quickly changing. I think that was one of the most interesting things to me, besides working with content creators and the development of it, was how dynamic and how quickly things were changing, especially in the TV landscape. And so, starting with sort of an old school era of studios and networks separately, it quickly scaled into, vertical integration, and things like Netflix are coming out of the forefront. So early on, watching the change made me realize that you had to be dynamic yourself as a business operator. And so I looked at that. I saw the landscape of social media in the early 2000s. Started to get into the agency side of the business and really looking at how content was interacting with brands, and was fascinated with the early stages of the democratization of technology to allow things like YouTube. So purposely, sort of watching the emergence of all of this, and always trying to ensure that I was, on the edge of things that were arriving and coming, and focusing specifically on how content and content distribution was going to intersect between brands, consumers and audiences.
Well, that's a really interesting path. And we all know the saying, content is king. Tell us about Ronin Content Services and your OTT platform, Social Club TV.
Yeah, so we launched Ronin Content Services in 2019. I exited a company called Prohibited that I co-founded. And really our goal was to sort of expand on the production of original IP, as well as curating other licensed properties and licensed content, and then building niche social networks that would be able to deliver premium content experiences to consumers around the globe. So we basically acquired the Prohibited library. We built Social Club TV, which we launched in May of last year. And even though we launched during COVID, a couple of things that sort of benefited us early on was the fact that, we had an audience that started growing quickly because people were sort of stuck at home needing content. We really were the only premium content provider in the space that was focused on the cannabis and culture and lifestyle consumer. And we had some really great partnerships that are now starting to come to fruition, like Emerald Cup and other sort of key celebrity content creators. So all of those things sort of helped us build out Social Club TV and get a pretty expanded network within less than a year.
And what kind of content can people expect to find on Social Club TV?
So right now we have about 600 hours. We're going to have close to 1,200 hours by the end of this upcoming quarter two. So it's everything from, sort of the premium content from cannabis creators like Crazy Bone from Bone Thugs, and Be Real and Burner, all the way up into exclusive content with like the Emerald Cup, to the Emerald Cup Awards and all the panels and sessions that are happening there. We also have shows like Pit My Grow with DNA Genetics. So we have sort of very focused cannabis content, but we also have things about, UFOs and aliens and conspiracy theories and criminal justice reform. So we want to have a lot of content to reach a wider audience. And so, what it really means is that, we're probably, if you look at our entire library, honestly, less than 70% of it is very, very specific with having cannabis as its focus or inside of the content. It's really, a bigger network than that. And that's some of the things that we're expanding on now. So we're going to have a lot of music, a lot of culture, a lot of lifestyle, and we're sort of building out that entire library.
And you're a serial entrepreneur, launching a business kind of right in the heat of COVID. What was one of the biggest challenges you faced launching Social Club TV, and how did it make you stronger by overcoming it?
Yeah, so when we left, I have two co-founders, Shelly Madison and Jason Rude. They both left the other company that I was with to kind of found this. So strategically, we decided to bootstrap it as far as possible to really, sort of build out the platform, to create the content and get the company into a post-revenue, including revenue positive operation before we went out and raised. So our goal initially was to raise actually in May of last year. And by March, it was clear that the entire world and landscape has changed. So we kind of buckled down. We really focused on some key things that were going to ensure the company could survive and still grow and stay lean. We're able to participate in some of the things like PPP and other things that sort of help small companies like ours. But in the long term, it really benefited us because now coming out of Q1, our revenue has grown tremendously. We're cash flow positive. We're growing the business, and we're still actually pre-investment. So we haven't raised any capital to date. We've bootstrapped it to this point. So we are going out. But I would say, the primary challenge is just, capital raising in general. It's like, to do it effectively and to scale, you're going to have to sort of focus on that exclusively for 3 to 6 months sometimes. And it's tough to do that while you're also growing the business. And so sometimes you have to make a strategic decision of, depending on where the business is, can you really focus and drive more growth? Because ultimately that will make fundraising easier down the road.
Absolutely. Do you have, if you could give one piece of advice to a startup founder who's bootstrapping their business, what would it be?
Just stay lean and focus on revenue. Just really trying to find ways that you can monetize your platform, and then also find partners. I think that's what's really been help us be successful, was find strategic partners in this space where the things that we do really, really well will help benefit them, and then the things that they do very well will help benefit us. Again, I'll go back to Emerald Cup as a perfect example. This is a 17-year sort of the Academy Awards of cannabis, if you will. That's been, for the most part, up in Northern California, in the Emerald Triangle for over, almost 2 decades. And they had to shut down last year, and they were getting ready to shut down again. And we said, hey, let's really do a digital version of this. So we became complete partners in this entity, or this, not even entity, excuse me. We became complete partners in this venture. And what it enabled us to do was sort of lean on each other on this expertise. And so they were able to bring on all of the brands that they've had decades of relationships with. We were able to build out a really cool platform and the ability to sort of create this broadcast quality experience. And it's been amazingly successful. So my main piece of advice, besides focusing on revenue, is go out and make partnerships with people that will help you do what you do really well, but also potentially fill some gaps.
So true. You never know who you're going to meet and how that can kind of help propel you in business or in life in general. You help businesses overcome challenges around securing investments. What kind of advice or tips do you have for entrepreneurs who are just starting out? Because you're also a mentor, right? You've worked with over 60 startups to focus on growth stage companies. What's kind of the biggest pain point that you see with these startups, and what advice do you usually give them?
I think the main thing is just be honest with your revenue model, figure out where you're going to grow and figure out what you need to be successful. I think, there's always this balance between, showing an investor or a series of investors, hey, I'm going to make $50 million a year in 3 years. Make sure that you can project realistic, for both, not just the investors, but for yourself. So I always kind of go back to the basics of how is your business going to make money? What is it going to cost to do that? And then how far along can you take it? I think we've seen the sort of barrier to entry change over the last 10, 15 years, whereas a seed round used to be like, I have this idea, I have this deck, give me money so I can build this. And then once I prove that it's can generate some revenue or be viable, I'll go out and raise more money to actually turn it into a business. And that's changed. Now the seed round is come to us when everything is at least functional, and then we're going to invest in a company that has some viability. So I think that's one thing. I think the market's moving so quickly. Becoming an expert in what you're really trying to do is important. Obviously there's new markets like NFT and all these things are opening up. And I think, the retail market's growing huge. Again, these are things that we didn't have access to even 5 or 6 years ago. So crowdfunding campaigns, Regulation CF or Regulation D, these are all viable things, but go into them with open eyes too. I mean, even a Reg CF campaign can be challenging because you have to do, you're going to be working with the SEC at that point. You have to have all of your legal documentation and all of your corporation, everything set up properly to do that. And you can't really bootstrap that. I mean, you can, but it's going to cost you 20, 30 grand to even get something like that properly going. So it's just about, in general, just knowing your business and making sure that you're well positioned to be successful.
And going back to the content side of things, there's so much content out there these days. Obviously, people are consuming content at such a rapid rate. How do you make sure that your content is kind of sticking out and that it's not getting lost in an oversaturated market?
So the first thing that I think that's very important about for content creators is understand that the medium is as important as what you're creating. What that means is if you're creating something for an Instagram audience, it's good that performs well for Instagram. That's not going to translate to necessarily an OTT audience or an audience that's going to be watching broadcast television. If you look at Quibi, for instance, one of the challenges that I saw early on for Quibi, even as they started, talking about it, was the assumption was, younger audiences have short attention spans. If you look at their consumption, they're consuming content for under 60 seconds or even under 30 seconds on platforms like Facebook and Instagram. And they still want premium content, and they want really, high quality content. So Quibi assumed, let's take those two things and build a mobile first premium content network that had short form content. But that was a terrible bet, because the reality was these same people that have short term attention spans supposedly are going and they're watching Stranger Things for 13 hours a day, even pre-COVID. Right. So if you are creating broadcast quality content, if you're creating content that you want someone to watch on a television screen, then understand it's got to be long form. It's got to be of a certain quality. It's got to be equal to or at par with some of the other stuff they may watch in a Netflix, because that's what they're going to compare it to ultimately. At the same time, if you want to create YouTube content or YouTube channel, you have to understand how the algorithm works. You have to understand what kind of content does well on those platforms. So long story short, what you're creating matters, but where it's being distributed and who's seeing it matters as well.
Do you have any tricks or hacks that either you start your day with X, Y, or Z that kind of you can attribute to your success so far in life?
For me at least, I started early. So, I'm up and at 6 o'clock. I give myself time to sort of collect myself. I'm not one of those entrepreneurs that claims he only sleeps 3 hours a day and is successful. I can't do that. I'm passed out by 9:30 at 10 at the latest. So I find that, giving yourself time to decompress, giving yourself time to, the whole idea of on the grind, 15 hours a day, it's just not sustainable. It's certainly not as long as I've been doing this. So just know your strengths. I like to, at a certain point, try and shut off at night and then allow myself to decompress, because you're going to go back at it again. I get up, I yoga, I meditate, I give myself time to be with my wife. And, and what's nice for me, at least waking up early, is by the time 7:30 comes around, you've given yourself an hour and 15 minutes to sort of have the day to yourself and prepare. And then you can really come in and focus. So, I think we sort of worship the grind attitude a little bit too much. And the reality is, take time off, decompress, give yourself time to do things, and also work within your best environment. Some people like to work late at night, and they're actually and that's fine too, as long as you can find a team or a group of people that will also help you be successful in that.
Yeah, that's such good advice. The grind culture is slowly diminishing.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time, what would you tell yourself before you launched your first business? What piece of advice would you tell yourself?
Yeah. So the main thing I would say is, make sure that as you're operating the business, you're aware of, sometimes you start a business, it's just not going to work out. And the reality is, I've been a part of several of those. Out of a fear of failure or out of a desire to make something successful, you'll sometimes throw, good money after bad, or you'll keep grinding away at something that ultimately will not be successful. And there's a variety of reasons why those happen. And so I think the main thing is, if it's really hard, if you're getting up every day and it's a struggle and no one gets the vision, or no one truly understands what you are, sometimes that means it's just not the right time or the right place, or it's just not, there's a variety of reasons. I was part of a company that I was consulting with in 2007 that had basically built a streaming platform similar to Netflix, but it was just, it was a decade too early. And there was no way they were ever going to be successful, regardless of what they did or how much money they had, just because the infrastructure and the bandwidth and the lack of content was there. So, I think that's the main thing, is just make sure that, you also don't spend 10 years of your life slaving away at something that ultimately won't be successful, and just be prepared to also be adaptable.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Where do you get your inspiration from?
I think people close to me. I think people that I work with. I think people that I see or talk to on a daily basis. I think along with this sort of false worship of a grind culture, we kind of worship, the CEO or the executive. And, I say that understanding I'm being interviewed now. But I think this idea that for me, teams are build everything. And I think I hope that we get in a place in society where it's as important as people like an Elon Musk are, or some of these other amazing leaders who, not trying to diminish their stuff, there has to be just dozens of people behind them that did everything to make their businesses as successful as they are. And I think some of the irony of what's happening right now is that some of these people get bigger and bigger. They're relying more and more on teams to implement their vision. And those people just, they're probably known within the community of where they work, but we sort of don't necessarily give them their due respect either, right? So I get my inspiration from my own team. I really do. I mean, I wake up every day, and when you have the right people that you work with and the right co-founders and the right partners, it's so motivating because it's just everyone starts rowing in the same direction, and you realize how great having a great team is. And then it attracts new partners, it attracts new people. And to go back to one of your earlier questions, if you're building a successful business, you need partners, and you can really attract partners in one of two ways. You can do it with money and success, which a small group of people will have at any given time, or you can do it by being a great operator and being a great partner. And that will also attract the right people, and knowing that they'll invest in you and partner with you. So, that's kind of how we run the business.
That's great advice. Are you still having fun? Do you wake up every day even more excited than when you first started?
That's a loaded question. Yes, I am still having fun. I absolutely am. I mean, I think last year was super tough for everyone, right? So last year there were moments where, there was such a lack of clarity on what was happening. This year has been what we've been doing this year in the last, really the last 2 months has been so amazing and successful, and so much stuff happening. It has been fun. It's been very overwhelming. But yeah, I'm absolutely still having fun. And I think that's the other key, because, there are other businesses I've been a part of that were successful or were doing very well, that I woke up one day and I was like, this is just not fun anymore. That's paying my bills. It's making money. I even like some of the people I'm working with, but it's definitely not fun. So this business is super fun. And I think that's part of the joy of being an entrepreneur, is if you work with great people and you believe in what you're doing, then it is fun. Don't ever believe that it's not a job. Oh, if you love what you do, it's not a job. No, it's still a job. But it's a fun job, and it's something that I'm entirely grateful that I get to do every day, for sure. So,
and where do you see the future of cannabis content going?
I think the future of cannabis in content is that, they need strong brands, right? So right now, cannabis is really starting to be separated into two different spaces. There's the commodity side of cannabis, which is the equivalent to a coffee bean, in the sense that the brand side is equivalent to Starbucks, right? So, I think that we're still waiting to see who some of these brands are going to be. And I think ultimately it is going to require them to understand that they have to invest in content and content marketing, and becoming a brand that means something to the consumers that are purchasing them. That means you're moving just beyond a strain name or a THC percentage or a flavor, right? And you're moving into what a brand identity is. And there are plenty of brands who are undertaking that. So I think that, number one, I think content and cannabis are going to be more important than they ever were, especially once things like federal legalization, or even banking or decriminalization happen, and we start to have true multi-state operations, and we start to have true, brands that are moving across state lines, and growing even international presences. In order to attract a bigger audience and a bigger market, you're going to have to use content to market to those consumers. I think that most cannabis brands are sort of single channel marketers, meaning they're putting all their energy into something like an Instagram account. Mm-hmm. And I think while that may have worked for some of the early adopters in cannabis, some of the early brands, there's not a single other brand in the world that's going to do single channel marketing. So if I'm a cannabis brand and I'm saying what is important in content for me, I'm going to look at alcohol brands, I'm going to look at food and beverage, and I'm going to see how are they advertising, what are they doing, what are they marketing, where are they drawing their audience for, because at the end of the day, what is the difference between a Budweiser or a Coors or a Michelob, right? If you look at them, are they really advertising taste or flavor or calories? They talk about those things, but they're segmenting into a consumer and who that consumer is. So, and they use content almost exclusively to do that.
Yeah, that's so true. If you could give a piece of advice to an aspiring entrepreneur who thinks they have a great idea, but they don't know where to even start, what's that piece of advice that you tell them?
first thing is to find a mentor, or a business mentor, an advisor, or somebody who has had success and failure in whatever it is you're trying to do, right? So that's always helpful, because if they're honest with you, they're going to help you avoid pitfalls and help you understand things. We're just starting to get into some spaces that, I'm like, a perfect example is events. I've always, I enjoy going to events, but I've never wanted to actually run an event. It's a very unique thing. So for us, getting into events require me to partner with people that are great with them, or we're even looking at retail or shopping. We're even looking at things like NFTs. So I'm reaching out to my community of people and asking them, for their advice. So I think if you're really starting out, the first thing is to understand, how can I reach out to people who have already done this successfully? And again, it doesn't have to be, the biggest, most successful person that you know of. It can be someone that's operating in the space every day. And then it's going to be find people that believe in the vision. Again, it really takes a team. I mean, you're going to have a team of dedicated people to make something successful. And, startup culture works for a while, but at the end of the day, if it's only going to take you so far. So that would be my main piece of advice.
Well, that was such good advice, Josh. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. Where can people learn and watch Social Club TV?
You can go to thesocialclub.tv. So www.thesocialclub.tv. You can go on your Android TV or your Roku or your Apple TV or iOS or your Android or pretty much any of your OTT apps and just look for Social Club TV. We have great partners right now. We have Rad Live. So we have a linear platform that's streaming on Rad Live on PlayStation 4 and 5. We're launching with Strum, which is going to be a great new platform partner for us. Excuse me. We're going to be on Samsung Tizen. So we're going to be available in 150 million homes, and what that really means is our goal by the end of this year is that any way you watch or consume television, whether you buy a Samsung TV and you watch through Samsung Plus, or you buy a TCL or a Vizio, or you're on your desktop, or you're on your computer, or you're on a Roku, you're going to be able to find us either as a channel that you can watch and install, or through a content partner.
It's exciting. I'm so excited to see the future of where you guys are. And where can people learn more about you personally?
I'm pretty terrible at LinkedIn, so I'll probably get better at that. But go to LinkedIn. You can go to the Ronin content services site. And yeah, just I'm a heavy promoter of Social Club TV, so stay tuned to that as well. Sometimes I give the elusive interview.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. It was just a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.